All right, everybody, welcome to today's webinar from TimeSolv, enhancing your productivity and profitability with TimeSolv Pay and more. Thank you all for joining us. I am going to give another minute or two to let people trickle into the webinar room here. So you do have an opportunity to go grab that last drink of water, cup of coffee, whatever you might need to get us through the next half hour to 45 minutes. Thanks, everybody. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with today's webinar. Once again, thank you all for joining me here today for our webinar on how to enhance your profitability and your productivity using TimeSolv Pay within your account. This is Scott Clayson. I am the VP of Marketing for ProfitSolv, which is the parent company of TimeSolv. But those of you that may have been longtime users of TimeSolv may recognize my name. I was the marketing director at TimeSolv for many years before moving to the ProfitSolv level about a year ago. And I've done plenty of webinars here for TimeSolv, and very happy to get back and talk more about TimeSolv Pay and how it really could be a difference maker in boosting not only your productivity, but your profitability. So thank you for joining me. We will be here for about 45 minutes or so, I'd be willing to bet. Want to make sure that you get the most out of your time. So let's go ahead and, well, first, a few kind of housekeeping items, I guess. Everybody who is joining us here today is on mute. We are going to be taking questions near the end of the webinar. You should see a Q&A icon. Please ask questions there at the Q&A icon, and we will get to those when we have the Q&A near the end. And we will also have a few polls that we'll ask. So I already did have a question that came in. Said they already have TimeSolv Pay set up. They're interested in learning how to set up payment by wire transfer ACH. Will this be covered? ACH payments? Yes. Essentially, accepting credit card payment or e-check/ACH is virtually the same within how you do it in TimeSolv Pay. Wire transfer, that I'm not 100% sure on because of how a wire transfer mechanics operate versus like in just a straight ACH type payment. But we'll get to that when we talk about how you can enter either your client's credit card information or their ACH payment information and run a payment. So good question right out of the gate already. All right, I love it. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Let's look at the agenda here. I'll do some introductions about who I am, my background, and so on briefly. We'll talk about the three learning objectives that were on the webpage where you registered for this webinar. First is the impact on accepting e-payments. Hopefully this is just more review for everybody. And in this day and age, we are already pretty well established that we should be taking e-payments. But what that can do for your business, I think is important to talk about, kind of level set there. We'll then get into talking about a little bit about the benefits of using an integrated payment processor right within TimeSolv, i.e. TimeSolv Pay, and how that really are differences between the different payment processing options that are out there. Point being, it's not just good enough to say, hey, I accept e-payments. It's how do you accept and run your electronic payments to make sure all your invoices get paid. And then last, we'll get into ways in which you can leverage TimeSolv and TimeSolvPay to simplify the process in which your clients will pay you. And there's many different ways in which your client can give you their money for the work that you provide them. And we'll talk about that the last third of the webinar. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get going. First, a little bit about who I am. I've been in the marketing world for about, gosh, 20 plus years now, off and on, probably more like, yeah, I think I said 25 last time I did this webinar, and that's probably more like it. Developing marketing initiatives and campaigns. I'm long in the tooth in that I vividly remember the days of where digital marketing over the internet was not a thing at all, because the internet didn't exist. I am a former high school history teacher, took a detour in the middle of my career and went and taught at the high school level, American history, world history, economics, government, and psychology. So I covered it all in 3 years of teaching, actually. So I do love doing these webinars. It's a great way to sort of get back to those teaching roots that I do enjoy, although I can't see the faces of my lovely students here today. But I'm going to assume you're all awake and not passing notes to each other or surfing your phones. Although, again, in dating myself, I was a teacher right at the cusp of when most high school students were starting to get cell phones for everyday use. And this was back when it was just flip phones and not smartphones, back in the early 2000s, about not quite 20 years ago, is when I was teaching. And we did have to worry a little bit about the flip phones, but not to the degree these days. So anyway, I digress. And then a little bit personally, my wife, my son, and I, my whole extended family, actually, we really love a really good steak, and I do get overly excited when I cook the steak just perfectly for my family. They are picky in how they like their steaks very rare, but they still want that nice crust on the outside. So anyway, I love barbecuing in the backyard where I'm located here in Minnesota. I'm in Minneapolis, where TimeSolv is actually headquartered. Okay, so that's a little bit about myself. Let's talk a little bit about electronic payments and why it's important to, if you're not accepting electronic payments, you should. And if you are, making sure you're using the best methodology to collect payment. So first, some statistics here. This actually was taken a couple years ago from Clio, who large practice management solutions, some of you may have heard of. They do a legal trends report every year. And one of the things that came out in the report in 2020 was the collection rate there, that column over on the right-hand side of your screen that you're viewing. Collection rate from law firms that use Clio, and there's probably over 150,000 lawyers roughly that use Clio, showed that they were only collecting on 88% of the revenue that they invoice, or the money that they're invoicing for, I should say. So point being is they're leaving 12% of their potential revenue on the table and not collecting it. And I mean, that's a significant, can be a significant amount of money. And there's a lot of reasons you can go into the hows and whys, and there's a lot of varying, reasons why. I know partly lawyers are not specifically, and they are actually discouraged from aggressively pursuing payment on unpaid invoices. In other words, sending them to a collections agency and so on. I know that the insurance companies who insure you for malpractice actively ask you not to do that. So it's important that we understand that collecting on invoices can actually get your properly can get that number up higher than 88%, and take that, really well-run law firms can get that number up to like 97%, 98%, where the only reason that they are not collecting on payment is a failed credit card number, overdrawn accounts, things like that. Credit cards that have expired that they have on file and so on. So let's talk a little bit further about that. TimeSolv did some data digging a while back and randomly looked at 1,400 firms that were using TimeSolv. And they showed that there was a significant amount of money being left on the table. This was the aged invoice amount that over 120 days, so invoices essentially that were 4 months or older, there was $500,000 being left on the table by those 1,400 law firms. Well, that's a lot of money. That is a lot of money being left out there. So obviously you don't want to have an accounts receivable that has 500K on your books. So again, the point is, don't let your unpaid invoices sit. What can you do to make sure that all your clients are going to be paying you for your work? And I think a really, key component of this is reducing the friction for your clients, not just in how they pay you, but just overall how they interact with you. And you want to meet your clients where they are. And that should include how, of course, they pay, but all your interactions, whether it's how you share documents, how you conduct meetings. These days, especially in this COVID world, the idea of making your clients have to jump through a lot of hoops to interact with you just isn't going to get it done, because the law firm down the street inevitably is going to meet your potential clients where they are. And that includes obviously accepting e-payments. We're all now conditioned. Very few of us actually use cash anymore, right? When paying for things, we use our cards, we use our Apple Pay on our phones, whatever the case may be. And according to the Clio Legal Trends report, 65% of consumers, prefer to pay through electronic payment. That's their preferred method. It's my preferred method. I barely carry any cash on me anymore. So quick poll that I want to ask here is, do you currently accept e-payment? Just a simple yes or no. Just let me know hopefully I'm hoping that everybody here at the webinar is going to say yes. They do take electronic payment. Looks like 75% of us here do. If you're not, then we should probably talk about the reasons why, because this is where consumers want to be. Even your business clients, and I will say this, the question came up at the very beginning in the chat where they want to learn how to set up ACH payments. And because I know I've heard from a lot of lawyers that say, well, look, all of my clients are businesses. They don't have a personal credit card. So, they want to pay via check. It's like, yeah, that's, I understand that. That's why taking ACH payment is just as important. Electronic check, basically, because these companies don't want to have to actually cut checks and put them in the mail if they don't have to. I can tell you from personal experience here, being at Profitsolve and at TimeSolv, we prefer to pay all of our bills via ACH if we can. That's our preferred method. And almost every vendor that we ever work with is more than okay providing, the routing information and so on, and how we can pay them electronically through an ACH payment. So you should really, if you're not accepting electronic payments, there really is, if it's because of the processing fees, you really need to get past that, to be perfectly honest, because you want to reduce that friction and meet clients where they are. However, my next slide here, let's talk about the payment processor method, because not all methods are created equal. You may be taking electronic payment, but how do you take it? Do you have a dumb terminal in your office that is actually a credit card swipe machine that was provided to you by your bank? Do you have to go to some login online to run that payment? Are you taking payment over the phone where your clients are calling you with their credit card number and that's how you're taking payment? They're not all created equal. So that's why I put down here, you want to meet your clients where you are as well. Meet them where you're at, where they're at, but also where you're at. And by that, I mean, You are in the tools like TimeSolv every day, generating invoices, sending out reminders on payment, putting in time, you know, putting in new clients, all of that sort of good stuff. So why not use those same tools you're in every day to also actually collect payment on those invoices you work so hard to put together and send out to all of your customers? So I do want to ask another quick poll question here. If you are taking electronic payment, how are you accepting that e-payment? And I have a couple options here. The client will call in and they will run that payment manually, or you will run that payment manually. The client will access a link on your firm website. That's a fairly low bar that a lot of firms have cleared, of having a link on their website saying, go here to pay your invoice. And how many of them might use a portal to submit payment? And then there's just other, of course, there might be some other way that you may receive payment. So it looks like right now, the 67% of you said a client calls in with information, you run the payment manually. And I'm going to be honest with you, that's not terribly efficient. Even accessing a link from your website, which a couple of people asked, or from an email they get in their invoice, there very likely is another hurdle to clear. And I don't have this as a poll question, but think to yourself, what happens after they submit that payment from that link? Are they able to put in an invoice number? Hopefully they do. I hope so, because then you don't know what they're even paying you for, what invoice. But if they do put in an invoice number, does your system automatically allocate that payment to that invoice number? Or do you have to go and look at the payment that came in, see the invoice number is 5320, whatever, go find that in a system like TimeSolv or whatever you use to send your invoices, mark that the invoice is paid, submit that payment, is the payment tool that you're using hooked up to your accounting? Or do you have to manually make an entry there, a general ledger entry? So again, this is my point is how not all payment processors are created equal, in that there are methods I'm going to show you where somebody can fundamentally pay you and it automatically does all that stuff for you. It automatically stores that payment or takes that payment and says it's allocated towards this specific invoice, and you can then automatically have that run to your accounting. Only 13% of the people who answered this survey said that they use a client will use a portal to submit payment. Oftentimes that portal to submit payment, when they do submit it, it will, because that portal is probably hooked up to a system like TimeSolv, it will automatically mark that payment, that invoice as paid from that payment. But again, there's lots of different methods, and we're going to show you that I think TimeSolvPay can really help speed up and make this process much more productive for you and ultimately more profitable. Okay, so one thing I do want to cover real quick, and this might be why a couple of the people, I think 25% of the people here aren't accepting electronic payment, is the processing fees. The whole idea of over my dead body, am I going to give 3% of my invoices or of my revenue to a credit card company or a bank or whoever for just doing electronic payment? So the question often comes up, how, first of all, should I just be charging more to my client to cover any processing fees? And yes, that is one option. If you take a look at your credit card statements for the last 6 months, find out what your average effective rate is, because credit card fees are different depending on the type of credit card used. There's a different rate if your client uses an American Express versus a regular Visa MasterCard versus a rewards Visa MasterCard versus a debit card. And all of them vary, and you don't have any control, obviously, over what type of card your client is going to be using. So you have to take a look at a volume of data to understand what's your overall processing rate that you may pay. And then just, hey, look, I'm just going to increase my billable hours by X% to cover that. That's one way to deal with processing fees if you don't want to deal with it. The other obvious question is, can you pass along that information to your clients? That's called surcharging. And that is the ability to basically say, when the client pays, and we've all seen this when you've paid credit cards. I know I do it when I, for the state of Minnesota with the Department of Transportation, when I pay my license plate tags. Every year when I renew, and I do it online with a credit card because it's the most convenient thing for me, I always get told I'm going to have like a 3% surcharge added to it because I'm doing it electronically online. That's called surcharging. Can you pass that along? Most state bars have come down with rulings saying, yes, you can. TimeSolv now has the ability where you can pass along surcharging to your clients. However, it is an all or nothing. You either give surcharging everybody or you're surcharging nobody. That's just the way the systems work. It's not really a decision that TimeSolv was able to make. That's the way surcharging is set up for payment processors. Most experts in the banking game would say processing fees is just sort of the nature of doing business these days, and it's the cost of doing business in this fashion with, again, meeting people where they're at. The convenience of letting your clients pay you in this fashion far outweigh the costs that are associated with that, would be what most banking experts would tell you. Now, another important component here is thinking about how you actually are collecting and how to increase your collection rate. And by this, I mean, what is the method in which you're delivering your invoices? Are you still printing and mailing through physical mail your invoices to clients? I hope not, to be perfectly honest. Snail mail is your invoice is going to get to your client in several days instead of minutes. And it's just it's a waste of time, paper, effort, the whole thing. Hopefully we're all emailing our invoices to our clients. Again, your client will receive their invoice minutes after it's created, not days, and it cuts down on the paperwork on your end. You'd be amazed. We got several calls from people during the COVID shutdown in March of 2020, where they were honestly, genuinely concerned about how they were going to get their invoices to clients because they were away from their office and they couldn't print the invoices and pay them because they were still using that method. And they had to pivot quick. And hopefully a lot of firms learned to pivot during COVID, when understanding that emailing the invoice is a much more effective way to ensure you're going to be getting paid. Okay, so now that you are ready to accept electronic payment, right? Let's talk about TimeSolv Pay specifically. TimeSolv Pay is the payment processing built right into your TimeSolv account. You do have to apply for a merchant account. Like if you already accept electronic payment, the 75% that do, you've been through it. You have to provide banking information, personal information, all that sort of good stuff in order to actually be able to take electronic payment as a business. So what information is needed and why, and how long does it take for approval and all that good stuff. Let me show you in TimeSolv where you can go to apply for a TimeSolv Pay account if you don't have one already. When you're logged into TimeSolv, you should see a TimeSolv Pay right at the top in your menu item if you're an admin person. You go to the settings area of TimeSolv Pay, and then you will see this application get started area where you can start with your email address, click get started, and it'll walk you through the application. Some things you're going to need that we make sure you're aware of ahead of time is your company's tax information, information specifically on the firm owner. And if you have owners, I know many law firms will have several partners who are co-owners of the business. If any owners own more than 25% of the business, they will have to provide their information as well. And you're going to need banking information to provide. We have an enrollment checklist that if you click on this, it'll pop up a PDF that you could print or save that will walk you through more details about the information that's necessary. And it mentions here the ownership percentage. If there are members that own 25% or more of the organization, they all have to provide that. So once you have all this information on hand, ready to roll, the process really will take less than 5 minutes to fill out the application. The approval then, assuming that everything is just fine with all of the information that you provide, and there's no additional questions from the underwriting that happens. Your application goes through what's called underwriting. You can get approved as quickly as a couple of hours. If there are issues with your application, our TimeSolvPay team will be notified, and they can reach out to you and let you know the status of what is needed. And then generally, once you get approved, you're able to start processing within 24 hours. So it should be, hopefully, that quick. So let me go back to the slideshow here. Okay, so what are some of the features about what you can do with TimeSolvPay, right, within TimeSolv once that application is approved? Three things that I think are important that I'll highlight here. First is storing payment information from your clients. The second is setting up recurring payments for credit cards that you have on file. And third is using a client portal to allow your client to pay you through a portal. So let's take a look at those. So first, storing payment information. This is one of the biggest benefits of having TimeSolvPay built in, is the ability to take your client's payment information one time and store it. And it's called tokenized. In other words, it is literally bank level security. It is the highest level of security you can possibly have. It's as compliant as can be from an bar association ethics rulings and so on and so forth. But it allows you to do things that most companies that you interact with do, and that is you give them your payment information once and then they will charge you recurringly, like Netflix, like your utility bill. I haven't written a check or even had to give payment information to a utility company in years. Most of you probably don't either. You give the information once up front. They send you the invoice every month. You can review it. And if you have issues, you can stop payment. Otherwise, you're just going to run the payment method on file. It irritates me, actually, when I have to go into a company I'm doing business with over and over and over again and continually give them my credit card number. I'll use the example, my irrigation company I use to do work on my sprinkler system. They have to winterize it every year, and then they come out in the spring and open it up every year. Every time I do business with them, they mail me an invoice through the US mail. They have on the invoice a place where I can go and pay online. So I at least do that. I go to their website, they have a pay here button, click on that. And every time I have to enter my credit card number and an invoice number and hit submit. Now, the vast majority of you who accept electronic payment who are sitting here today had that your clients will access, if they're not calling in their credit card number, which I could have done, which is again is a pain because that takes time. That takes somebody's actual time to take that. Going to a link on a website and entering that information. I, as a client, if I do business with you over and over again, I don't want to have to do that. So let's just store that client information or that credit card information, or to the person who asked the question, ACH information as well. Let's just do it once. So in TimeSolv, you come over here to your clients and matters. I'm going to choose this first client I have, Amir. You go to any client or invoice, or excuse me, matter setting, and you have a payment settings tab. Click on that. This is, you can see I have this credit card already on file. I could delete it and put a new one in. But more importantly, to answer that question previously, if I go to somebody like Bob Smith, and I go to payment settings, and I don't have those payment settings, this is where I can either enter the credit card information or that bank account information for taking ACH payments. So this is for that question of the banking information for e-check. Here it is. This is where they would provide their bank name, the account number, the routing number, and so on. And then this would automatically withdraw the money from their account when you charge them for the work, when you decide you want to charge them, or if you have you run the invoice, or they submit it themselves. Or you can do obviously a credit card. Either way, credit card or ACH/e-check information. Now, when there's an invoice to be paid, you already have that information on file. You can say, is it okay if we run this on file, and so on. run the payment that we have on file. So that's number one, storing payment information. Once you have that information, then in TimeSolvPay, you can set up recurring payments. So if you have payment plans, basically that's what this is, then you can set it up. And with the new recurring payment, you have to have a payment information stored on file. You have to choose the matter you're going to be setting up a recurring payment for. So I can type Amir and choose whichever matter I have for him. That Bob Smith, you remember I was looking at Bob Smith. Bob's not here because I don't have the payment information stored. So you type in the matter in which you have a payment information on file for that client. Reference would appear on the statement that gets sent to them. So this can be pretty long. You can put as much information as you like on here. The amount, the frequency, you're going to do this monthly, or you can do this annually, whatever. So it's a monthly, every 2 months, every month. The next date you're going to do it. Here's the either the amount, it'll end after they've paid $5,000, or it ends after you send the invoice, 10 times, or the date that'll end. So you have lots of options here, and you set up recurring payments. It's done then. All that collection of that money by the recurring payment happens in the background. You never have to touch it. Client's not calling in their credit card information, none of it. It's just there, it's happening. The last way then, or the other way, is through the client portal. In TimeSolv, when you go to the settings here, you can, under the general here, you have your client portal setting. You can enable the portal and determine, if it's going to go into your operating account, your trust account, and so on, and allow all payment methods. ACH, credit card, you could do, either or all. Then when you have a client in matter that you want to have them pay via a portal, when you're viewing that client and you have your contacts, you have your optional invoices, the person who's going to receive the invoice, you go under the edit here, and this is where you can check a box that says has portal access. You can create a login for them. They don't have to have a login. And then you can hit update and it'll send an email that will give them access to that portal. So now when you send them an invoice, in that email that you sent them, there will be a link that says, click here to pay the invoice. Let me show you what that looks like. So that's going to look something like this. An invoice has been sent. Here's a copy of it as a PDF. And here's a click here to view your invoice. And when they click here to view your invoice, what they end up getting to is their portal, where they're going to see that same invoice. They can hit pay, the total balance. If they have a login, they would log in here and then they would make payment. That's how it works in the client portal. They make the payment here in the portal. The beauty of this is when that payment is submitted, it would automatically mark that invoice 713 has been paid. You don't have to do that work to find that invoice in TimeSolv, make a manual payment input in TimeSolv and allocate it to the invoice like you might normally do. Everyone on here is a TimeSolv, client. So they're used to going under payments, recording the payment, for that matter, go to Amir, find, there it is. They paid by check or credit card, whatever, save it, then allocate. None of that has to happen if you let them pay that invoice. And yes, a client, one of the questions came up, can they make a partial payment through the portal? The answer is yes. It doesn't have to be the entire amount. It can be a portion of the invoice. They'll be able to, on that screen, actually enter the exact amount that they're going to submit for payment, if it's not the total invoice, the total for the invoice, I should say. Okay. A couple other things. I'm going to quickly pass through the TimeSolvPay portal. There is a separate portal that TimeSolvPay makes available to you. When you go to your TimeSolvPay settings, then you can click here where it says TimeSolvPay Portal. And this will open up an area where you can look at reports. You can do chargebacks if necessary. So this is where you can go to disputes and see if there's any transactions that have been disputed and do chargebacks. This is where you could grab a link for the website if you still want to do it in that fashion. And a lot of you said you do. I don't recommend doing this because the caveat is that in TimeSolv, you would have to still, when that payment comes in, you'd still have to allocate it towards the invoice. That manual work, that work I showed you in the portal, not happening here if you make them pay on a website. But you can go here to, I believe it's on a catalog. Hang on. They've changed this around since the last time I went through this. So my apologies. But this is a place where you normally can find where you can get the link to the website is in your portal here. And a TimeSolvPay support person can help you find that if necessary. I don't want to get too bogged down with this. Okay, so that's what the TimeSolvPay portal can show you, is the various reports on payment and so on. Let's talk now, as I go back here, the different collection methods is sort of a bit of a review. I've already talked about a lot of these to one degree or another. There's a couple I'm going to show you in TimeSolv once you have TimeSolvPay. And it kind of goes from the most amount of work to the least amount of work to make you productive and make you profitable and make sure you're collecting payment. You're collecting payment for every single invoice. First of all, these first four, oops, sorry about that. These first four, putting a link on your website, manually running a one-time charge, where that's where the client is calling in and you're manually running. I'm going to show you how you can do that in TimeSolv in a second. But this is where the majority of people that we surveyed here are right now, according to that poll I ran. They're either given a link to a website or they're manually doing it through a call-in. Not optimal. That is the heaviest workload for you. The middle kind of ground is you do have the card on file and you're going to run a one-time charge, but you still have to run the charge is the point. You're still running that payment. The next best option is at least you're having the client make that payment through the client portal. The best option is to charge those cards on file in batch because you stored that payment method. And I'll show you that here briefly. So let's walk through each one of these here. Okay, so link on website, you go to the TimeSolvPay portal. Again, I apologize, I'm not able to show you. They seem to have moved around a few of the things here on how you get that, that link. Since the last time I logged in here. So we won't sweat that too much. Manual one-time charge, you can go to your payment. You have, the person called in on the phone. They said, hey, I got my credit card number. Can you take payment right now? And you're like, yeah, sure. Give me a second. What you would do then is come into TimeSolvPay here, say, okay, so this is Amir calling and you're looking to pay an invoice for that July certification work. Okay, so you bring up that client matter and you're going to pay me with a manual entry, and you're going to pay me, $500, $5,000. Let's just say $5,000. That's what we're paying. Okay. So I'm going to hit save and charge. And then when you're ready, this pops up. Okay, great. Can you read me that credit card number now? What's the name on the card? Okay, now give me that credit card number, the CVV, all that kind of good stuff, right? We're all used to doing this. And then we would hit submit. It would take that payment, but you still would have to allocate that payment to a specific invoice once you have it run, just like you would any other payment method that you've entered here and that you're used to doing, whether you're taking it by check, ACH, manual entry, same way for those questions. You would do the save and charge, the ACH manual entry, and you're going to get that same banking and routing information question for you. So that's an okay method, that manual one-time charge. The next best method is I already have Amir's payment information on file. As we know, I showed you that earlier. So at least we can say, okay, it's on file. I'm going to hit save, and that's going to automatically run payment. So if I do, like, let's just do $500. I have the payment method on file. I hit save. It's going to run a payment. Payment's been run via TimeSolvPay, but again, I still have to allocate it to an invoice. So not great. I had the credit card. It was on file and ran the payment. The next best method, client portal. I showed you what happened there. You send your invoice out on the email where the invoice is sent out. There's a link. Go to the portal. Your client makes the payment. Here is the holy grail, the next method I'm going to show you. TimeSolv calls it zero AR method. It is literally the way in which you can make sure that your accounts receivable is 97+%, where the only reason you're not getting paid for an invoice is because the payment method on file has gone bad. Expired credit card, over limit, whatever the case may be. The first thing you need to do is collect that payment information. A lot of law firms will, as part of their client intake, the various paperwork that involves a intaking a new client will include a payment or credit card authorization document where they submit their payment information. A lot of you may have had to do that for other businesses where you have to submit payment information. It's basically like, I'm going to give you my number now and authorize to charge that credit card a certain time. In the agreement that you have with your client up front, this is what several successful law firms on TimeSolv, we use TimeSolvPay, do. They state up front, when we send you your invoices, if we do not have any dispute on that invoice from you within 5 days, we're going to run payment with the payment method we have on file. So they give 5 days for any dispute to that invoice that they mail out. It's the equivalent of, you get your utility bill and it says, hey, your electricity was $70.23. If they don't hear from you, they're going to, on the due date, by the due date, they're going to run the payment method on file. There's no reason why you as a law firm shouldn't be doing the exact same thing. The firms that do this, then, they do it, one of the firms that helped pioneer this in TimeSolv, they run payment on credit cards twice a month. Excuse me, they send out their invoices twice a month. On the 5th and the 20th of every month, they send out invoices. So every 2 weeks, they state upfront when they take their client's business to begin with, if we don't hear from you within 5 days, we're going to run the invoice on file based on the credit card method we have, or the payment method. So they know payday is the 10th and the 25th. They know they're getting their money on the 10th, on the 25th, every single month. Reliable income, not relying on their clients to make a payment, hope that they call in to give you their credit card number, hope that they use the client portal. There's no hope involved anymore. It's a known fact. They are going to get their payment on the 10th or the 25th of every month. In TimeSolv, it's very easy. You go to your sent invoice screen and you can select, I'm looking at sent invoices for a certain period of time. In this case, it's going back to January of 2021, actually. I haven't done many test invoices in here in a while. Then you can sort by balance due. By default, it's going to be, your sort's going to be by the date it was sent. But I'm going to sort my sent invoices by the balance. And I can see, here's all my paid invoices. I'm going to click it again, and it's going to sort it by the invoices that still have a balance to them. I'm also decided I'm going to only show me sent invoices in which I have a payment method on file. So I could have done all. This is every single unpaid invoice. You can see there's more here that appeared. I said, just show me the invoices in which I have a payment method on file. And I have 3. Imagine that you have dozens. Here's 43 invoices that I've sent out. Imagine all of them are unpaid, but imagine all of them you have the payment method on file. I could just select all here. Notice what happens when I check any one of these invoices. Look over here. Anytime I select any invoice, you see the colors change. And more importantly, not only could I resend the invoice to the client, I could void it draft, I could void it all together, I could download it again, I can charge. This is the golden button here. I have, what's my balance due here? $19,000. I have these credit card methods on file, payment methods on file, whether it's credit card or ACH. I select all of them. I batch charge them. And in one push of the button here, I just got paid for them. These 3 invoices. I just got paid $19,000 in one click. That's how you achieve 0 AR. That's how you achieve that productivity. That's how you achieve that profitability and close that gap from that 88% collection rate that I showed you at the beginning to like 97% collection rate. Collect the payment method up front, store it right in the tools you always use, like TimeSolv, then meet your clients where they're at. Let them know, I'm going to send you an invoice. If you don't have any issues with the invoice, I'm going to go ahead and run payment automatically 5 days later. And then you go in and you run the payment. You have the control over getting paid. You don't have to rely on your clients and do that hope and guess and wait game. That, first of all, the way you get paid, the time it takes to get paid goes way down. You're not taking payment over the phone and having somebody manually enter the number, although you could here in TimeSolv, like you saw. You're not sending your client to a link on your website where they then go and enter their payment information and their invoice and hit pay. Then you have to go take that payment, allocate it to the invoice to make sure the invoice shows as paid. You don't have to do any of that. You're not even sending your client to the client portal and having them enter the payment, which does at least mark the invoice as paid, because you're still hoping. You don't know when they're going to do that. You don't know if they're going to do it 10 minutes after they get the invoice or 10 days or 10 weeks or 10 months. You don't know. This method of collecting that payment information upfront, running it based on the agreement, running payment based on the agreement, guarantees you'll get paid when you know you're going to get paid, when you decide you're going to get paid. Really powerful stuff. I think this can really revolutionize how law firms collect payment, and doing so right in the tools that you use, which is TimeSolv. You're in there every day, like I mentioned before. Okay. So, questions. Let me know if you have questions. You have that Q&A button down near the end, or at the bottom. You can always give us a call. You can email support@timesolv.com. I didn't put that on this slide. And let me ask you, are you interested in learning more about how to set up TimeSolvPay in your account? Just a simple yes or no. Those are the answer yes. We'll make sure to follow up and have one of our TimeSolvPay representatives. They can walk you through how to apply for your TimeSolvPay account and can walk you through how to get started. You've seen some of the methods in which you can enter your credit card, your client's payment information, credit card or ACH. Okay, I don't see any questions here. So it's about almost 10 minutes to the top of the hour. I said it would take about 45 minutes to an hour, so we're right there. So if nobody has any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and let you folks have a little bit of time before your next meeting. I thank you all for your time today. I hope that you have found this a productive lesson in how you can improve not only the time it takes to collect payments, but the amount that you're able to collect. If you have any questions, timesolv.com, 1-800-715-1284. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to catch up with you soon.